Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. We are so happy that you are here with us. Dr. Ricardo White and myself, we look forward to meeting with you each and every week. And so we are happy that you are here. We're excited about this evening's topic because we're talking about relationships and we're talking about marriage, really. We're talking specifically about 4 signs that if you have these 4 things going on in your marriage, it is telling you that that your marriage is headed in the wrong direction. And so we want to talk about those 4 elements this evening. So we look forward to jumping in to that. And if you've been watching our Sabbath Saturday programming, we've been dealing with marriage through the sanctuary, and that has been amazing. We had the De Leons, which are both marriage and family therapists, on this past week, and we're going to have them back talking about continuing that discussion. But we are talking about it here on Mental Health Mondays, and we're going to take a deep dive into relationships and marriage and how to have the healthiest marriage and relationship that you can. So welcome to everyone. Welcome to my co-host, Dr. White. It's always great to do these programs with you. And we love doing the programs with you, but we like to hear you too. So if you could take yourself off of mute.
Good to be with you. Good to be with you again, sis.
Great. Also, yes, I got to put
let's have them tell us where they're coming from.
Yeah, we want to know where you're coming from. So please put in the chat where you're watching from, I should say, not just where you're watching from. Okay. We also want you to get updates from the Mental Health Mondays team and the Living Manna Church. If you would like to get those updates and alerts so that you know when we're going live, not just with Mental Health Mondays, but the other programming that we have on during the week, you can put in LMOC and then text the numbers 84576. So you put LMOC, which stands for Living Manna Online Church, and you put that in like the name who you're texting it to, and you text the number 84576, and it's going across your screen as well. So do that if you want to stay up to date with Living Manna Church and Mental Health Mondays. So I see we have Toronto, Canada, Anaheim,
Florida,
California,
Trinidad,
yes,
Pennsylvania, Netherlands. We got
Lamar. That's nice. Netherlands. Welcome, Netherlands. Trinidad. Welcome.
Let's see, Anaheim, California. Yeah, awesome.
Great. Thank you for letting us know that it works in Canada. To be able to get the updates. Yes, we are welcome. We are happy to see all of you here and excited to jump into this topic. Dr. White, I'm excited. Are you excited?
I'm totally excited. With all this emphasis on relationships, one would start to think this must be important.
It is important. It is important. It's so important because not only it's like it impacts the two people who are in the marriage, but of course it affects their children. Like a healthy, happy family. I mean, your children go into the world. This is how, they go into the world and, they impact the world. And if they're coming from some really broken homes, then they're going to spread that, possibly to the world. That's going to be their stamp on society. So we really want healthy marriages and healthy families so we can have that continue and not have the toxic relationships continue through generation. And plus the statistics, I mean, we've talked about it and you were on the program, we talked about it, but the divorce rate is 50% and 51% in the church. And you brought out a very important couples who are Christians. I mean, the divorce rate is high for them too, but you brought out an important point that, the Christians are trying to live a Christian life and represent God and those type of things. So it's like the enemy could attack them even harder. But even, with that attack, they're having a much higher attack possibly than others. And their divorce rate is at 51%. So they're like having to fight off the attack at a higher,
Right.
it's just a very forceful attack. So it's definitely something that we need to talk about, and people like to hear um, information that is helpful to them to be able to help their marriage, because most people don't just openly talk about like, oh, we have this issues in their marriage and things like that, and it's understandable. You don't want to tell everybody that that's going on, but when you can just click on a button and hear helpful things that can help your marriage, is beneficial, that's really helpful. So I feel like people are excited to hear about this topic as well.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so just diving into it, yeah, we wanted to share with you, 4 different signs, basically. You can call them signs or symptoms that
Mm-hmm.
your relationship, well, they negatively impact your relationship.
Right.
And at the start, you talked about the importance of relationship, but like a healthy relationship is a building block of a home, of a community, of
Mm-hmm.
really a nation. So,
Mm-hmm.
a healthy relationship, it produces so many things. That's why we talk about it so much. We know that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, if we can empower you with some tools
Right.
to help you in your relationships, it's going to go a long, long way. And of course, this is the start of the discussion so that you can sometimes delve into these resources further. And as always, partner with your mental health community,
Of course.
because we can't make recommendations, but we can start this discussion that hopefully you then take further so that you can create value in your life.
For sure.
So that first sign that we want to talk about this evening is criticism. Criticism.
Criticism. Oh, yes.
Criticism. So what exactly makes the criticism particularly toxic? Because it's one
Mm-hmm.
thing to share to a person, hey, this is a problem.
Right.
But what kind of criticism is especially toxic from your vantage point,
Yeah.
sis?
Criticism that is attacking the person's character. And that is when criticism has gone too far. It's attacking. It's not just saying like, oh, you didn't put the milk away this morning, you left it on the counter. It's not that. It's like you're attacking the core of who they are.
Yeah.
um you know you're I even sound so bad to even say it, but you're a loser, or
Well,
you're
right.
so
It's not
stupid, or how could you be this dumb, or these type of things.
right. It's not just, hey, can you please put the milk back? It's
Right.
you always leave the milk out. You
Right.
always do those sorts of things. You're the type of person. So it's
Right.
really attacking who the person is, as opposed to highlighting that they might have done something. So separating the person from what they've done. So
Right.
that's where it can take a toxic turn.
Mhm.
um, Now, in my situation, I think I was just criticizing too much, whether I was doing it, whether I was attacking her or not. Sometimes criticism
Mhm.
can just be too frequent.
It can be too much. And
It
that's
can be
true.
too frequent.
It's true.
Even if you're doing it completely right, nobody
Mhm.
wants to hear that they're constantly doing something wrong.
Right. Right.
And so this idea of criticism, it's really, really helpful to monitor that.
Mhm.
Because one of the things John Gottman talks about is if you have one negative, you should have 5 positives to that
Right.
negative.
Right.
And so
A
one
5-to-1 ratio.
yeah, one trick I started exploiting was when I got the thought about a criticism, I would actually think about a compliment.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
my wife would end up getting a lot of compliments.
Right.
So if I was thinking about something negative, I'd be like,
Mhm.
honey, I'm really happy you're with me.
Mhm.
Because one of the things I learned was you do not have to address something when you first become aware of it.
Right.
And I also have 2 hands, so I can actually deal with the issue. If the milk is
Mhm.
out, guess what I can do? Put
Mhm.
it away, you
Right.
know? And you can make that mental note that, hey, I can address this at a better time.
Right.
but in the meantime, let me get some positives in. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that to be much, much better than being a hypercritic. Over to you, sis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wanted to say that you mentioned John Gottman, which he was the founder of this theory that we're talking about tonight today, and his wife also helped him with that. And it's evidence based, it's research based. Has been, I guess at this point, has studied it for 34 years, and so there's a lot of research that goes into what he presents. And when he's like saying the 5-to-1 ratio, so you're basically saying, it takes five, like say if you have
Positive,
one positives, if you have like one criticism or
negative.
negative thing that you want to say, it takes five, positive things to say to your spouse, to be able to balance that. And so yeah, that's a lot. Like, I mean, how many marriages do that, right?
Right.
There'll be more like five negative and maybe a positive in there.
So you can imagine how that person's feeling.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why that technique, I noticed, my goodness, I'm thinking way too many negative thoughts. So let me make sure she's experiencing this positive affirmation. Because
Right.
the other piece to it is a lot of times what's going on in her world,
Right.
or his world.
Right.
Like sometimes that criticism is coming right at a moment where that's the last thing they needed to hear at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
why it can be helpful to say, you know what, a compliment might be helpful right now. When
Right.
you think about the partner and all the stresses that they're going through, what if they're really thinking about that right now? And so
Mm-hmm.
you bringing them out of that is just to criticize them. No, you can see
Right.
how a compliment would be super helpful.
Right.
Because the recommendation for dealing with criticism is a gentle startup.
Right.
Okay.
I was just gonna say it's the way you approach, a gentle and easy startup, is what Dr. Or John Gottman talks about, and just how you're approaching your spouse. So an easy startup gets you to, it's going to get you to the place or the result that you want. Like you're going to be able to say what you needed to say, and it's going to tear your spouse down. It's not going to make them feel worthless or criticized, but you're having a conversation about X, Y, or Z, whatever it is you're trying to share, but it's not going to tear at who they are as a person.
And how much more
And
gentle
you're not
can
going to
you
end up in an
be?
argument.
Right. And how much more gentle can you
Right.
be than leading with a compliment? Than leading with a
Right.
compliment. So that
Right.
you can't really get more gentle than that. But I would
Mm-hmm.
just say sometimes I just leave off the criticism. I
Right.
just remember that, you know what, it's okay to have a positive, because I remember his rule. You really want 5 positives before you're licensed to put in a negative.
Give.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I
Mm-hmm.
found that worked, quite a bit. Now,
And really, you can use this in any relationship. If you think about it, like as parents, I mean, imagine if we were mindful, like to come at our children with like five positive things before we criticize something that they're doing, or say something negative. And even having an easy startup, like he studied for marriage and relationships, but these are principles that you can take into any relationship. I know there was a question up there.
is there
Um,
criticism in the relationship? If there is criticism in the relationship and both parties agree to work in sanctuary to stop this habit, so they must be alluding to the sanctuary that we've been talking about.
I'm thinking
How
so.
long would it how long would a term would it take to be healed? How long does healing, take?
I
Well,
mean,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say that. Well, my answer would be that differs from person to person, right? There's not a, or from
Yeah,
couple to
I mean,
couple, I should say, from relationship.
right, right. So there's going to be variance. The good news is the brain is neuroplastic, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and so it's really helpful to remember that God designed the brain in such a way where it's not stuck, it's not fixed. Those neuronal connections, those neuronal networks, they're not necessarily permanent. So you can expose them to experiences that will literally impact the networking. So you can do your interventions with hope and
Right.
trust that over
Right.
time there can be improvement.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
really important to remember. That's why when you're talking about the mind, we should be humble in doing it, because the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, with the right interventions, with the right experiences, change can take place because
Right.
of how the mind is designed. It's a neuroplastic, meaning it's vulnerable to change based on the
Right.
experiences and based on even the thought process you engage in. You can
Right.
re-network your brain, and healing can occur. In terms of a timeline, that's hard to say,
Mm-hmm.
and that might be a question more appropriate for a healthcare provider that might know your specific situation.
Right.
But what we can say is, with time, change can take place. It's harder to comment on how long in the
Mm-hmm.
given situation that you're talking about, because it'll depend on the intervention that you
Mm-hmm.
choose. It'll depend on the level of immersion that you engage in order to drive that neuroplasticity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take
I
one
want
more
to say
question.
that,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I just say this, that neuroplasticity, I think, is the biggest blessing that God gave us as humans, right? The fact that our minds, our brains can change. That is the biggest blessing. Because without that, I mean, where would we be? We wouldn't, I don't know. We would be,
There's this
that's just the hugest. Go
there's this
ahead.
amazing yeah, there's this amazing book called The Brain That Changes Itself. And I believe it's
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Norman Doidge's. But it just catalogs some of the most amazing experiences, because it really discusses the history of the development of that idea of neuroplasticity, and
Right.
some of the accounts, even situations where a person experienced uh, brain damage from, let's say, a
Mm-hmm.
stroke, with the right rehabilitation.
Right.
And they talked about, for example, the POTS Institute
Mm-hmm.
and the aggressive rehabilitation that they would immerse the patient in, that was able to reverse
Mm-hmm.
or restore amazing functions that had been
Yeah.
lost from a stroke, because
Right.
really they were driving reassigning of function in the brain. I
Right.
mean, just amazing testimonials that can give you confidence that the brain is neuroplastic and
Mm-hmm.
capable of change. It
Yeah.
was absolutely amazing.
I don't know if you follow Dr. Caroline Leaf. Have you? She's a neuroscientist, and she's done a lot of work with people who've had major brain injuries. Like the young lady, I was just watching something that she was talking about, a young lady who was in a car accident, and after, before the car accident, she lost, like, her IQ went down like 20. She lost some of her IQ, and then after, I think it was like before the car accident was at 100, then she lost, went down 20, and then after she worked with her, and she was able to finish high school, went into it went from to like 120. So she was smarter after. She was able to work with her and get some of her abilities back in her brain, and she was actually smarter after because she did that work, and the brain changed. So it's
That's
like a
impressive.
powerful, yeah,
That's absolutely
very
impressive.
is amazing. I know there's a question up there. What about a person who criticizes you with a solution? Is that okay? I would probably say in a marriage, like, I don't know how, I mean, we're using the word criticism, like, and you have a solution, but don't approach it like, let's like not even let it have that label as criticism. It could be a very kind suggestion. Um,
People
that,
don't like to hear about their flaws, okay?
right. It could
People
just,
don't like,
yeah.
even if you have a solution,
Even
that
if,
doesn't
right,
neutralize the sting. People don't like to hear about their flaws. If
right.
someone was coming on to you, they don't start with your flaw.
That's true.
Um, Obviously, there's an exception to every rule, but
Mm-hmm.
it's usually flattery. People usually are complimenting some aspect of you. Why? Because people don't like to hear about their flaws.
Mm-hmm.
Our significant others do not feel good about us when we're constantly bringing up their negatives. even if we have a solution. So that's a simple answer to that. And I'm sure the listeners want us to get back to what's second.
I
Go
do,
ahead.
and I want to go there, but I just want to say this really quick, just because this, I think, well, I mean, you said that you used to criticize, I know, but I think that as the females, it's like, this is something that I learned, that I actually read about too, but I learned, practically, is that, we're moms and we're wives. And sometimes we just, like, our husbands just expect and us to, like, we're being mom all day, and when they walk in the door, we're supposed to, like, switch the flip the switch and be wives, right? But then it's so many times we don't flip that switch. We stay as moms because that's what we're just doing, like, either all day, especially when our kids are young. And then we come at our husbands like we do our children, not necessarily consciously, but because that's just where we're at. And then we don't flip the switch and go back into wife mode. And so a lot of the things that we might say will come off as criticism or critical or telling them what to do. I mean, how many husbands have said, why are you treating me like a child? because we deal with children all day. And so, yeah, we have to consciously flip that switch with our husbands.
I'll take it. I'll take it even one step further. This is a free tip to the wives. We actually flip the switch even beyond wife to girlfriend.
Yes, yeah, go to girlfriend. That's a big flip for being a mom all day.
Fun.
That's a big flip.
That's fun. It's fun. It's
fun, but not always easy to do when you're stressed out with kids at home.
Fair enough.
But we need to go. Yeah, you're right, because time is going. So we need to go to the next one, defensiveness. This is another, I think we should have said the name. It's the 4 horsemen. I think, did you say that?
No, I didn't.
Taking you to the direction of the apocalypse, which is the end of the world, which could be the end of your marriage. So defensiveness is the second horseman.
Right.
The second horseman. And go ahead. You can open up with that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, sure. And so basically, we've all been there. We've all been there where you're feeling attacked and you're like, no, that wasn't me. No, that wasn't me.
Right.
And the reason that is such of a painful experience for that other person is because ultimately the bid we're making in relationships is to be heard.
Yes.
Ultimately, the bid that we're making is, would you please hear me? Would you please feel me? Would you please take the time to empathize with what I'm saying?
Right.
So it is incredibly damaging when you give that person who's making that bid to be heard the experience of rejection. So, hey, I feel like you're doing X, Y, or Z. No, that's painful. But it's also reflexive, though. If someone's attacking you, we want to defend. You know, in this situation, though, what's happening is that person is being rejected. They're not getting through. Getting through, and so it can feel pretty devastating.
And especially if there's criticism going both ways, because criticism isn't just going one way. But if somebody's like, we're going, like, say we started with the criticism piece. So let's just say somebody's criticizing you all the time on both sides, and then you're going to naturally become defensive.
Basically, you feel unsafe.
Right.
So it's not that your response is not necessarily legitimate. It's just that it's a unhelpful dynamic pattern.
Right.
Because here you're going to defend, and when a person is making a bid to be heard, if they don't feel they're getting through, there's a good chance they're going to increase their volume. So, and that, of course, looks in different ways, from yelling to shouting to so on and so forth. And of course, I'm not prescribing this. I'm just describing some of the dynamics that can occur. And so this is why the goal is to sort of interrupt that dynamic.
And you said, and you're basically, when you're being defensive, you're in your fight or flight type of state of mind, because they don't feel safe.
They don't feel safe. So the idea being, you don't even have to say, necessarily you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna give you one of my little tools. So listen closely. What's interesting is you literally can say, so if I'm hearing you, you're saying that I did X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
Like notice what that does. What that does is it shares with the person, I heard you. I heard you. And it moves you out of being defensive. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like I did X, Y, or Z, and from the looks of it, looks like you're pretty frustrated about that.
Right.
Looks like you're pretty frustrated. So you're showing the person, I hear you, I feel you, I get you, and I'm not blocking myself from you.
Mm-hmm.
And notice you're not even saying whether that's right or whether that's wrong. You're just letting the person know, I heard you.
Right.
Does that go a long way, sis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that goes a long ways. That goes a long ways. Um, yeah, this is so yeah, if if you see if these two horsemen are you recognize them in your marriage, and John Gottman has studied this again for like 34 years. It's not something that can't be reversed. It's not something, and we're going to talk about those solutions. I mean, on our next program, but it's not something that can't be fixed. So don't be dismayed, like you're like, oh no, I already have two horsemen in my marriage. We're definitely doomed. You don't have to be doomed, but praise God if you're becoming aware of this. Is definitely, you see that some of these things are in your marriage. You can make that change, and that
Okay.
will make all the difference in the world. I know there's a question up. Let's see.
Okay. If your partner is already in a fright or flight response, wouldn't most communication be hard? Okay. So
Mhm.
the simple answer is there's a challenge, Gregory. That definitely is a challenging scenario, but
Mhm.
your goal would be to then back and really try to connect with the partner in terms of saying, hey, my sense is you feel unsafe. It's like, what's going on that's making you feel unsafe?
Mhm.
And then listen with every morsel of your being.
Right.
Listen, because I think when we get to arguing, we forget we're talking to our lover. Like we
Yeah.
forget that we're actually partners. 9 out of 10
Mhm.
times, you're connected to mutual aims. You have mutual goals, and
Mhm.
so the goal is to just realign.
Right.
But so it's really critical to clarify. Um, what how am I making you feel unsafe? What is it that I'm doing? Am I yelling? Am I being hypercritical?
Mhm.
um, am I not hearing you perhaps? But help me understand what I'm doing to make you feel unsafe, because you're correct. If a person feels unsafe, it is definitely challenging to communicate, and so you've got to now do your homework to figure out what you can do to make that person feel safe.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. All right. And then, so in another
Mhm.
question, it said, my spouse has had several strokes. I'm sorry to hear that,
Yeah,
Jewel.
that's hard.
Will this impact communication? The answer to that question is it depends on where the strokes took place.
Mhm.
So there are different regions of the brain that carry out different functions.
Right.
So that, there are strokes that'll impact the ability to move, the ability to speak, the ability to think, the ability to see. So it all depends on where in the brain the stroke took place, to determine if it'll impact communication. But
Mhm.
Jewel, be sure you get that book, The Brain That Changes Itself. It
Yeah.
has some profound stories about amazing rehabilitative recoveries that occur with the
Mhm.
right rehab,
Mhm.
so that it really cements this concept that the brain is able to change itself with the right rehab. So
Right.
again, the book is The Brain That Changes Itself.
Mhm.
And I believe the author is Dr. Norman Doidges.
Yes. Before we go into the last two, I want to give you an opportunity, Dr. White, to talk about a program you're doing. I mean, I know your book Burnout, but it even has to deal with relationships. I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Thank you so much, sis. So what? So of course, I'm the founder of the Mastermind Institute, and we are very passionate about killing burnout. And what we did is we designed a year-long membership where what we do is each month we have a different focus. In September, we're actually going to be focusing on romantic relationship. So if you're interested in that, email me, and I'll be happy to send you a link, or you can go to Dr. Ricardo, you can go to killingburnout.com, actually, killingburnout.com, go to the membership, and there's a membership tab, and you can sign up to get ready to participate in our launch in September, and you're going to absolutely love it. So it's the first Monday in September that we will have an awesome didactic session. So you'll get instructions on how to participate in that. But thank you, sis, for allowing me to share that. So
that sounds great, because definitely our marriages can burn out, or the flame can dim, for sure. We were just talking about that this last week, for sure. So that sounds like really, really good stuff. But our third, the third horseman is contempt. And contempt is I like to say you have one foot out the door by the time contempt is really, doing its thing. And that can be through, you're communicating, but it's through sarcasm, and the body language is telling, there's a rolling up their eyes, and you just don't have respect for your spouse. You just lost all respect, and you don't care. You don't care.
There's an entrenched sort of disdain, and it'll translate to from what you say, to the body language, and to your responses, to sarcasm, but just an entrenched disdain. And this hopefully would really alert you that, you know what, I'm going to need some help to change this. Let me get some help to change this while I still can. And what you may notice is that, you're really thinking a lot about your spouse's negative, qualities, and you're constantly just thinking about that. And it's creating this loop, and it stews, and it just boils up in contempt. So you feel morally superior, and you are attacking the person's character. So it's like, just think about having the flavor of bile in your mouth when you think about that person, and that should really alert you that, you know what, let me take some steps while I still can. Let me take some steps to change this. And it's very likely you may need external support.
I was just going to say, because at contempt, you're not even trying to have healthy communication. There's no 5 positives to 1 negative. Like, that's not even on your radar. You're just saying something that's not kind, or again, sarcastic or snarky, but there's really it's the passive aggressive type of comment that you're really trying to say something else, right? They're not, your spouse is not feeling that love or care, basically, even the care that you care necessarily about them as a person at this point.
Yeah, so next week we'll be explicit about the antidotes to these 4, challenges. But contempt, that should definitely raise some alarm bells. And then that'll bring us to the last one, which is stonewalling.
And according to John Gottman's study, which he studied, remember, it's research evidence-based, right? That men tend to stonewall more than women.
You have a theory as to why?
I was gonna ask you, since you're a man, I was gonna say, well, why do you think that is?
Well,
Um,
I
I
have,
think
I
they,
have,
I think, I
sorry.
think they just shut down. I think by the time you're in the stonewalling, you have completely just shut down. I mean, they say, that when you're arguing, at least that shows that you still care, that there's passion there. By the time you're in, that's why I said contempt is like your first step out the door. But by the time you're into stonewalling, you won't even argue. You'll just be silent. Like you're just done. And I think we can go back to the De Leons like not communicating with each other for 8 months. I still are not having meaningful conversation. I'm sure they had a baby, so there probably were little comments in between. But for 8 months, they didn't speak to each other. They were definitely 8 months, yeah, in the stonewalling. What something that I'm telling their story for them that they might say something that they didn't mention this week, but um, Cesar De Leon, the husband, he had already was about to sign a lease for an apartment. He was already going
Wow.
to, let her know that he was going to leave because when she, as we heard on Sabbath, that when she came to him and saying, "I don't want to lose the marriage, I don't want to lose you," he's like, "I'm not in love with you anymore." But by the grace of God and God healing that marriage, they were able to, take the steps forward to be able to come out of that. But by normally by the time you're into stonewalling, you're emotionally divorced. You might physically still be in the same residence, but you're emotionally divorced.
Well, props to them on, just really exposing their relationship that way
Yeah.
and the intimate details for us to all benefit. So props to them for doing that.
Hmm.
Um, here's some of my thoughts on stonewalling. Very often you find that women are more verbally adept than men.
Hmm. Right.
Women tend to be more vocally savvy,
Hmm.
verbally savvy than men.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they sort of have a leg up. So that
I say
whereas
we can
men,
attach our feelings to words more easily.
it,
I
it,
don't.
it
That's my. We can attach our say how we feel. Are you there?
well,
Are we okay?
and I'm here. I can, yeah.
Okay.
You froze up. You froze up for a little bit.
Oh,
But
okay.
like I think a lot of men will feel just like they are being ineffective in getting their words across.
Right.
I think a lot of, and they'll just feel outclassed. And then combine it with one more thing. So men are physically more aggressive,
Hmm.
but here in this situation with their spouse, especially if you're a decent person, you can't even resort to what you normally would cling to if you're going to be a decent person.
Right.
So men's typical tactic is going to be to withdraw, especially when they know that, you know what, I'm not trying to take it there. I'm not trying to take
Hmm.
it there.
Hmm.
And it's actually a coping skill. It's like, look, let me shut down because I'm not trying to take it there. And I think that's my suspicion. So
Hmm.
that's not like data driven, blah blah blah. But
Evidence based.
that's not evidence
It's
based,
it's
double
Dr. White's
blind,
thought. Yeah.
placebo controlled. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Now, of course, there are men that will blow this rule out of
Right.
the ocean
There's
because
always an
there are men that are
exception.
very
Hmm.
verbal. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, there are men that are very comfortable, very able to articulate, and don't feel one down in that
Right.
conversation with their significant other. But there are a lot of men who do. They feel sort of outmatched. Their
Hmm.
words are used against them. They just don't feel like they're effective, and so they're like, rather than just get my just wiped up the floor with me, let me just withdraw. Okay.
Yeah.
And I've lost and lost. And of course, there are women who are saying, hey, I've had that experience, where you just like, I don't even feel like fighting anymore. I'm going to withdraw. I can't.
Hmm.
Again, you feel unsafe.
Hmm.
It's the ultimate
Hmm.
feeling of unsafe. So you don't even respond.
Right.
And so, yet again, it's a real profound sign of breakdown. What were
Hmm.
you going to say, sis?
I was just gonna say, I had a couple once. The husband had said, his wife is saying all of these things, and she's just like, and he doesn't respond, and he's just like trying to process what she's saying, and like he just has like a thought in the queue. That's the word he used, like in the queue, but it's not like ready to come out, and he's still processing. And she's like way ahead of him with all these words and saying all these things. It's just like exactly kind of what you said, that, men, they process things in a different way and so it may take them some time to get those emotions or feelings into words. And for women, we're just like, we want it right now, right now, right now. Like, and that's not how necessarily all men communicate back so quickly.
The stereo, there was a question about, are we wired differently?
Oh yeah.
I think,
Mars and Venus.
Well, I mean, I think anybody that goes through like life has to
Mhm.
see that like we just approach things differently on a whole.
Completely.
There will always be exceptions. There will always be exceptions, but my goodness, I think it's pretty obvious. The illustration I usually talk about is, if you ask me to do something and you ask me to do that one thing, I will do it like really well, really well. But if you ask me to do,
very funny. That's very funny. He
if you
said
ask me to do,
men think like Fred Flintstone. That's hilarious.
but if you ask me to do several things at once, it's probably not going to come out all that well.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, if you ask my wife to do several things, she could juggle a child, she could mix the soup. The soup might not be perfect, but we'll all eat. Nobody's going to go hungry.
Right.
Baby's happy, they're playing, and she's remembering that the light bill has to be paid and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
She can do all that well.
Mhm.
I find in my humble, experience,
Mhm.
I find men tend to be more serious. They want to do one thing at a time.
Right.
Whereas I notice women tend to be more global and integrated.
Mhm.
So the going theory was, men tend to be more left brain, and women tend to have the ability to go right and left brain. They tend to prefer right brain, but they can access both, more so than, let's say, men. And again, there will be exceptions to every single thing I'm talking about, because obviously, you have women who would be like, no, I'm much more left brain, and you have men who are much more right brain. So there are exceptions to everything. So we're talking about, hey, what's really under the bell curve? What's the general thing that you see?
Right. Donna says, my husband has told me this many times, one thing at a time. My husband's told me that too. It's very interesting. He said exactly that. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, are you going to bring the whole world of problems to me right now? Or you just could I like just one thing at a time? And I'm like,
sequence. Give me the sequence.
I'm like, you can't fix all these problems at once? No, but yeah, that's how. I don't know if you've seen on social media. I think I've seen it on Facebook, just how men, like, they have a picture like how men think, and there's just a railroad track going straight forward, just one. And with women, there's like all these different tracks all at the same time, and that's just, hey,
Right.
we can, and we're happily like that, and we manage it very well. But
And let me tell you right now, it's phenomenal, because I'll tell you right now, the women that I collaborate with at a high level, like, it is so amazing, because they'll be like, okay, well, we're doing this. Well, let's not forget this and this and this and this and this. And you're just like, wow, wow. It's amazing. The outcome is so much better.
we're bringing our skills of being a mom into whatever, like in the workplace or wherever, because that's a mom. Those are motherly skills. Like when you're raising children, you have to be able to do all of that.
They're integrative, and
Yeah.
it makes for such a better results. Now, versus we tend to be focused. So our ability to focus, it can be really helpful in crisis, because we're really good at saying, okay, this is extemporaneous right now. This is what we need to keep really kind of central. And that has its advantages, as well. You can see the power of the partnership, though. Like,
Right.
when
Yes.
both of those things come together, it can be so critical when we can learn how to play off each other. Oh my goodness.
Because we need, yes. Even
Well,
though
and
we can do all of that, we need our husbands, our men to do what they do best, and then it complements what we're doing. Because without,
and
yeah.
and I will keep repeating this, because we don't want to perpetuate the stereotypes. However
Right.
much we want to put women in a block or men
Right.
in a block, however much we want to do that, we must be prepared for women and men that shatter that stereotype.
Right.
You gotta be ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you can't have rules that, okay, well, only this person can do this. You have to know
Mm-hmm.
that there are people that shatter that.
Right.
There are men that want to be that are incredibly integrative
Right.
and women that really want to be super, focused. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's person by person,
Mm-hmm.
situation by situation, and you can't do the cookie cutter. Well, I can look at you and tell how you're going to be. No, you
Right.
have to meet the
Yeah.
person and experience them to know how they're going to be.
That's
So
right.
that's incredibly important.
That's right.
But
That's great.
so we talked about 4 signs that
Mm-hmm.
if these things are prominent in your relationship, you really want to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Criticism, and
Mm-hmm.
not just highlighting there's an issue to work on, it's
Right.
criticizing the person. It's not
Right.
just that the milk is out, it's you always leave the milk out. That's your style, you
Yeah.
know, and just attacking their character. That
Mm-hmm.
can cause a problem. The other one is contempt, okay? So having that, just that resting sense of disgust,
Mm-hmm.
disdain, um, what's the word that cynicism, just
Right.
cynicism towards that person.
Sarcastic.
Um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
really unfortunate. The other is
And
defensiveness. Go
right.
ahead. Sis, what were you going
No,
to
I
say?
was just gonna say defensiveness because
Defensiveness.
mm-hmm.
Imagine you want to hug a person and they look like this. Imagine
Yeah.
you want to appeal, you want to bid to a person and they're like this. They're
Mm-hmm.
defended. And so that can be a problem. And then of course there's stonewalling. Just
Mm-hmm.
I I can't help but think of learned helplessness. So with learned helplessness, a person is beat down so much that it's
Mm-hmm.
just, you know what, I don't even care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. You do
They've
do
just
whatever. It's
they've just
just,
given up.
it's like they've given up. But
Mm-hmm.
that's different, but I just can't help but thinking of it. But
Mm-hmm.
stonewalling, where you're not going to engage. You're
Mm-hmm.
tired. So your coping skill is to not engage. And of course, if the relationship is making a bid to reach you,
Mm-hmm.
stonewalling is a brick wall.
Yes.
Like, how does that feel?
Right.
So both people are feeling devastated is what you want to see.
Right. And if you're seeing these things in your marriage, like you don't have to be in the contempt stage or the stonewalling stage to be like, oh no, call 911. I mean, you could see it's like even in that, okay, we are both kind of critical to each other. And it's not a 5-to-1 ratio. And, there is some defensiveness there. It is, it's at that time where you can say, okay, we can try to be aware and try to work on these things, but if you feel like you need a little bit more assistance with it, then a therapist, a marriage therapist is something that you can call upon, a mental health professional in your area, that can help you, because you don't want it to get so bad that it's that it'll become so very difficult to put the pieces together. You want to
Oh,
put
right.
it back together as soon as you are aware, like, okay, this is a problem for us. Go ahead.
Because the De Leons highlighted this,
Oh yeah.
that when you push past those periods of disconnection, on the
Hmm.
other side of that can be amazing intimacy.
Right.
Amazing intimacy.
Yeah, they
And
say they're
what's
closer now because of what they went through,
exactly, just
and I can see
amazing
that.
intimacy.
Hmm.
And then of
Hmm.
course there are the studies documenting that, there are people who when they divorce, like let's say 3 to 5 years later, they're not any happier.
Mm-mm.
And the implications of that is not, no, stay in your marriage no matter what. That's not what
Right.
we're
Yeah.
saying.
No.
What it argues is that it's sometimes a really good idea to fix the issue,
Right.
because you would be taking the issue into the next relationship anyway. So it
Hmm.
would be a great idea to work on fixing it. Now, I
Right.
did see a statement.
That's a very kind comment, Gregory. But
What did he
well,
say?
he's the same. He said, find Pastor Ivor's videos more helpful than therapists. So, and that's my husband, but I'm a therapist. So I probably have to disagree with that.
Ah,
Or I would say that yes, a pastor who talks about these issues definitely can be helpful, and even those messages that Gregory is talking about can be helpful. But a trained marriage and family therapist or a mental health professional that has specialty in marriage and family issues is definitely, and Pastor Ivor would say this too, is definitely can help deal with your issues.
Well,
And
it's like
yeah,
it's like
in a very
saying that
systemic way. Go ahead.
it's like saying that a marriage and family therapist can do a nice sermon. Well, maybe
Yeah,
they
but not
well,
like Pastor Ivor,
well,
right?
maybe, but like it's not going to be on the level of Pastor Ivor's,
Right,
sermon.
right.
And so the flip is true that, when a person is taking the time to go through the discipline of gaining
Mhm.
skills to deal with marriage
Right.
therapy, and you, for example, you, Sister Tante, you have a
Mhm.
Christian background as
Right.
well.
Right.
So,
And you can find Christian therapists, they're everywhere.
yeah, but respecting that when a person has put discipline into
Right.
developing a skill set, you're gonna get a more skilled product. The other thing
Mhm.
was I saw a statement: women are more manipulative. Is the word? No, women are not more manipulative. I can think of a ton of men who are very manipulative. So I don't think men or
Men
women
and
are.
women are manipulative.
Yeah,
Men
men and
and
women
women are. Yes, we can
incredibly
be.
can be
Mhm.
incredibly toxic
Mhm.
and incredibly manipulative. So I think that goes both ways.
Right.
Um, let's see. Don't say never always. I agree with that, and I definitely believe that. I love how committed to mental health Pastor Ivor is. So that we can say.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
He is not afraid to deal with the issues and
Mm-mm.
bring them to the forefront. So that's definitely true.
We've had this
Um,
conversation. I say, I feel like pastors who are engaged in talking about, and they're pastors, they have to family and marital issues. I say, you guys are like the EMT, right? They can there's a major situation going on in a
they
family,
can
and then
triage.
yeah, they do triage. That's good. Triage, right? They
They
do
can
triage,
triage, but they're with skill. They're going to get you to a
right?
setting that's their
That's
skill set.
right.
That's their skill set.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sorry I'm late, said Krista. Well, we are too, Krista. And
The
how do
good
you
thing,
manage?
the
How
good
do
thing
you
is you
manage?
can do the replay. But go ahead.
Yeah, you can definitely go through the replay. How do we manage Asperger's in a marital partner? Like, listen to
Mhm.
how specialized that question is. How
Mhm.
do we Thank you for asking it. But my goodness, if I were you, I would be looking at some resources. I would be
Right.
looking at resources in terms of what exactly is Asperger's,
Mhm.
so that you can understand the implications of that,
Right.
and so that you can then attach it to your particular situation. And then what is the impact of Asperger's in marriage? So that look at the work that could be done with understanding who is Krista, who is the partner, what is the past that both of you are bringing to the situation.
Mhm.
How does Asperger's color that all? And so then what would be the appropriate interventions to enrich the experience of marriage with a partner who has Asperger's?
Right.
So that is a very, very powerful question, but there's quite a bit of investment that could be done to gain the information to enhance that marital experience.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
great question.
Yeah, that was a
A
good
biblical
question.
counselor is excellent therapist. I've benefited from one.
Yes.
So I love how that sounds, but I don't necessarily agree. By definition, a biblical counselor is not necessarily an excellent therapist. You want to make sure that the person is biblical and that they are excellent, and not think that just because a person can quote scripture, that automatically means they're skilled to
Right.
deal with your issue.
Right. Right.
That is part of what's hurting the counseling world
Right.
when we don't take the time to make sure that the counselor, the therapist, has the skill set to deal with the given issue.
Right. Right.
Um,
And
so
I don't know if
so
she
yeah.
meant biblical like Christian or she just meant like they're not regular therapists, but they're just biblical counselors. I'm not sure, but
And either way,
um,
we're happy
yeah,
that you benefited. We're happy that it was
yeah, we're
helpful.
happy.
But
Yeah.
we always want to warn people, and it takes work to find someone who's got the skills to deal with the issue that you're presenting
Mm-hmm.
with.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that work, it's worth it. It's worth
Yeah.
it.
I always say this. I started in California, in San Jose, California, and I worked at the Christian Counseling Center in San Jose, and it. I would have to say at least 80 plus Christian counselors, because some people say like, "Oh no, I just want an Adventist counselor," and I can say I worked with some of the. They were Christians, but they were some of the best counselors. Their skill set was just,
On point.
amazing. Like I was saying, you can find a very good counselor that can deal with your issues and is trained to do that. And also, they may not lead with their Christianity, but they're Christian counselors. And if that's what you want, and you bring that into the counseling room and session, they will follow you with that.
Mhm. No,
So,
absolutely.
hmm okay, this is a
Absolutely.
professional Christian counselor. Yeah, that's what I thought you
Exactly.
were trying to
Exactly.
say. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, we're happy, Joanne, that you found that and it was a blessing for you. Praise
That's
God. And
uh,
it's hard for people to find good counselors that they can do that work with, and that therapist client, um, connection is very important within the therapy work. And it's not easy always for people to find somebody that the therapeutic alliance or connection is there.
so this week we talked about those four horsemen. Next
Hmm.
week we're going to talk about the antidotes. We'll talk
Yes.
about, hey, what's recommended.
You don't want to miss
Gottman's
that.
Yeah,
You don't want to
Gottman's
miss
claim
that.
to fame was that he could analyze, 5 minutes of a data of a couple interacting from, let's say,
Hmm.
his love lab, and with about 93% accuracy, he could determine if they were going to be together 5 years later.
Right.
So it was absolutely, amazing. But
Hmm.
we highlighted four horsemen that you don't want showing up, or the relationship may be apocalyptic. And so what
Right.
are the antidotes to those four horsemen? That's what we're going to talk about next week. Over to you,
Yes.
sis.
Yes. So so you don't want to miss that. Definitely tune back in, share this program share it on your social media, share it with all your friends and family. And because, hey, everybody's in a relationship, whether they're married or they're in a relationship. So share this and definitely tell them about next week, because you're going to want to hear what are the answers, what are some of the things that we can do if our marriage is either headed this direction or in this situation. So you're definitely not going to want to miss. I want to, if we can, put back up on the screen the number that they can text. I know you can text it to LMOC. So you put that in that's okay. It's coming up right now. Yes, text LMOC to 84576, and you will get text alerts of everything that Living Manna Church is doing. You will get reminders of all the programming, and even here on Mental Health Mondays, so you won't, just like was it Krista, or I'm not sure who it was, who said, "Oh, I'm sorry that I'm late." You won't be
Right,
late
yeah.
because we'll send you a reminder so that you will not miss next week's program. And so you can do that. Take that information down, and it's scrolling across your screen. And we go ahead.
Well, definitely join us on Saturday.
Yes.
So Pastor has committed the team to have something for you each day of the week, but he brings it home on Saturday. Brings it home. Just amazing Sabbath school, classes.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the session with the De Leons, and they really gave heartrending content to
Mm-hmm.
help you benefit. And they're
Right.
coming back. They're
They're
coming
coming
back so that
back.
you can delve into. That's just Sabbath school, and
Yeah.
that's all just Sabbath school. And then, of course, Pastor Ivor does an amazing sermon where he really breaks the bread.
Yeah.
And I love how he makes it applicable, so
Yeah.
that it's not just a bunch of theory, but it's applicable stuff. So
That's what
so
we try
yeah,
to do here at Living Manna Church. Everything
yeah,
needs to be practical and stuff you can just take home right away. And it's practical to your life. That is
yeah,
that is our goal. That is our
yeah.
goal.
So
So
please don't forget to give and support the ministry so
yes.
that these efforts can continue.
Yes, and you can do that by going to our website, livingmanna.church, and you can check out our other programming that we do all throughout the week. And for our hosts that lead out, you can read and to learn about them as well there. So you can visit livingmanna.church. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great night, evening, after, wherever you are, morning. Some people it's morning already, and the next day. So have a great day. But we look forward to seeing you next week. All right. God bless
Take
you.
care, sis. Till
All
next
right.
week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.